There's also an infrastructure investment with like 350 pages hardcover. That's a big printing bill, and you have to be very, very sure that you've got distribution in place to be able to get rid of something like that.
It's interesting because the infrastructure has collapsed. You know, we say that, but it's still there somewhere, and there's some big guns that are able to make it work. But the buyers are still there, the readers are still there. There's more readers now. The internet has, like when we started this, we actually didn't know how to, there was no Twitter and Facebook, there was no way to connect with people. It was literally, I mean, Google even, I was so proud, like, Google, they found us. But now it's more about, you know, just people and it's so different.
Okay, it does seem this odd thing where, on the one hand, the readership is really exploding for this kind of material, for queer material. At the same time, that the infrastructure for getting it out there is problematic.
Because actually that exhibition is really cool.
I was wondering if, Zan, you... Oh yeah. I want to ask one question about the kind of historical context of this. That you have the older gay publishers like Allison Books. Zan, do you see yourself as kind of along that historical timeline?
I think so. I think that one of the reasons that I wanted to start Northwest Press was that there wasn't really an outlet for queer cartoonists anymore. At least not like Robert's point about how you can publish through Burning and Wonder, but you don't make a lot of money that way, or is it really using yeah, you didn't make a lot of money even though
we can second that.
So I wanted to have something that was definitely catering to queer graphic work or graphic novel work, and could, once its footing, could be actually a living for the artists who I'm publishing. But it's very much queer dedicated. Like I'm not trying to do something that's broader than graphic novels and comics, or broader than queer. Like I just wanted to be queer graphic novels and comics. So in that sense, it's very much a queer publisher, but I'm laser focused. And so I think that part of the thing with there's a lot of publishers out there, especially ones who do digital and print on demand work, where they are wide open to all kinds of stuff, and they say, oh, everybody, you can publish with us, you know, it's no big deal, and no upfront costs, and we'll pay you a little bit of money later. And the brand gets so diluted, and you don't know what you're going to get when you get one of their books. I want to make sure that when people buy a Northwest Press book, that they know that it's going to, that I personally said this is worth publishing and spending my money on to make sure it gets out in the world, so that they have at least a little bit of confidence that it's going to be quality, bookshelf-worthy material.
So you become a curator as well as the retailer.
Absolutely.
Tony, I just want to kind of finish up with your thoughts on, do you feel like the traditional gay publishers, queer publishers in the literary world can kind of learn from what's happening in the graphic novel and comic book publishing, or vice versa?
Well, I mean, I think that many of them are beginning to do the same thing. One of the things I wanted to say earlier is that a lot of writers are still depending on the queer publishers. And you know, thank God that Zan, that you have Northwest Press now, and that people have a platform through you. But yeah, I mean, our authors are still going to Kensington, and Magnus is new, and Arsenal Pulp and Cleus and Bella and Bold Strokes, and those are very important to our writers, because I mean, a lot of writers are not necessarily DIY and need the help of publishers who care about their work and know what they're doing. And we still have a lot of those publishers in our community. And even though like the infrastructure is, no longer what it was before, it's true that the readership, I think, is growing. With our awards, for example, our nominations, it's almost a mystery to us, but they keep growing every year in terms of how many books are being submitted for nomination. Partly it's self-published work, But it's not entirely that, because our organization, the Lambda Literary Foundation, our readership is growing on our website. We have more members than ever. So there is something going on that seems to be a contradiction.
Yeah. I'd like to open it up to some questions to the audience. We've got about 15 minutes left. So does anyone have any specific questions for the panel?
What do you guys think is the best avenue for publishing if you're just starting, like Lulu or print, print to order?
So in terms of printing and specifically printing, or just kind of
or should I start online and put something, because I want exposure more than money right now.
So the question is to the panel, basically how to start about a publishing venture. Like, do you start online? Do you start with print on demand? How do you start?
I would lobby very strongly for starting online with a webcomic. There's the barrier to entry is almost nothing. There's no overhead except for perhaps maybe $20 at most of hosting fees. The road is really well paved in terms of the applications to set things up, and the opportunity to build an audience, which I think at first is the most important thing. Even if your goal is to become a tycoon and make $1 million on this, is a lot easier. I would say, for me anyways, I wish I'd started with webcomic 4 years ago. And even just in terms of the path of monetization, in terms of merchandising, other things like that, I know people who do wind up having success. For me anyways, it's much more successful than print on demand, certainly in Lulu, because it's very high cost. Things are so expensive with print on demand. For example, even just printing this book right here, the cost of printing it is close to $4. It's a 32-page full-color book. If you're selling it to a retailer, they're going to, whatever price you give them, they're going to have a discount of 50% on that. So for me to make even $1 on this would have to go for like $8 or $9, which is pricey for a short comic, particularly one that's not explicitly pornographic.
I think you need to know your goals first. That if you want to make a bit of money or just enough to pay for a little bit, that's great. Or if you want to spread the word about your book out, then make that your goal, make awareness your goal. Probably awareness is easier for you rather than to make a cash return quickly.
And if you do want to dip your hand into actual print, I mean, you don't have to start with like a hardcover, full color book. There's a long, long tradition in the comics industry about handmade objects, and in this increasingly electronic age, the more distinctive and interesting you can make your actual physical object, the more chance you are of people picking it up at a convention like this. So if it's black and white work, that's very, very cheap to make on a Xerox machine. You can have a coloring party with highlighters with your friends and hand stain the covers a little bit. You can do things that will make it a distinctive physical object, and that's a way of learning how to navigate reproduction and build from there. Go to one color. My books were black plus one color for a long time for a reason. The less choices you have sometimes when you're starting out, the better the end product is. You don't get overwhelmed with all these possibilities.
And also, one of the best things you can do as a person who's going to self-publish your work, especially if you do it by hand, is a stack cutter. It's a machine that has a thing like a clamp that holds the paper in place, shears it off, cuts it off. Design your work as stuff you're going to photocopy and put together and staple and full bleed and trim it off. People are mystified. Like, how did you get it to print all the way to the edge of the paper? And that is like, it's very little cost to you. It's something that will reap rewards over years and years and years to come. I did so many zines. Like I did the first Glamazonia zine this way, and it just looks really nice because people are not expecting that.
There's, in comic books, there's this kind of unusual history of DIY and publishing and self-printing, and I think which is really kind of comes a lot out of the punk zines of the '90s and stuff like that. So, which Steve was part of and other people here. So, but then also I think what's going to be happening is that as a lot of stuff is going online, a lot more content is going online, the stuff that remains in print oftentimes will become more handcrafted. Hand silkscreen covers, kind of beautifully, part of the book stuff. So that's a nice way to kind of enter a market, because you can do a small little print run and see how it flies with people. Start building a community and see what it's like to go to a convention.